So we've been adding things to our bodies to augment our human capabilities at least that long. But we have a problem. In Silicon Valley and the tech industry in general, we have grown up accustomed to designing black metal boxes that are hidden under our desks. And suddenly enter the Internet of Things and wearable technology, we have people accustomed to designing black metal boxes that should be hidden under our desks, are designing things on our wrists and other places where they are worn. So we have a problem. That is the wearable fashion tech problem. Now, we also have the ability to do a lot of amazing things. We have some very creative people creating beautiful wearable technology. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. That's my intro to the topic. My name is Josh Bradshaw. You can find me online at WorkTechWork. There I have written extensively about wearable technology, including wearable fashion. I've been published there on Fashion Tech and a couple of other sites talking about wearable technology. What do I do for a day job? Product strategy. I match products with markets. And I argue for aesthetic design in everything that I do. And wearables is one of those areas. Let's go ahead and intro our panel today. Actually, each of the panelists, we agreed we would all introduce ourselves. So we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves, and then we're going to have a discussion about fashion and tech and wearables. So why don't we just go down the road. Let's start with you, Syuzi.
Hello, everyone. My name is Syuzi Pakhchyan. I'm an experience lead at BCG Digital Ventures. And at BCG, I lead a team of really amazing sort of strategic designers and experienced designers create products that actually bring value and meaning to people's lives. My personal past and my personal passion space has been in wearable technology. I've actually been working in and around the space for over a decade now. And my interest really is in sort of being the bridge and the funnel to bridge the technology world and the fashion world. And not just from an aesthetic point of view, but really from also a business and manufacturing point of view.
I have a very loud voice, but okay, we'll add the mic. My name is Karl Weaver. I am the OEM Business Development Manager for Oasis Smart SIM. We're an embedded SIM card smart card manufacturer, and my focus is embedded SIM card technologies. I cover North America and Northeast Asia. I'm also a mobile payment, mobile device security, embedded mobile device security specialist in the China and India market background. So I'm involved in designing embedded SIM card technologies into all kinds of IoT, M2M, and wearable devices. I joined Oasis in February, and what I discovered very early on is the easiest entry point for an IoT, M2M, or wearable device that I found coming out of the manufacturers in the Far East, the OEMs and the ODMs, the original equipment manufacturers, is a smartwatch. But not just a smartwatch with 4G, 3G or 4G LTE connectivity, and also NFC, near field communications. And I approached lots of these companies, and quite honestly, the feedback I got from them in terms of the fashion aspect, well, should I mention it now or should I wait?
Well, wait just a second. We're doing intros now.
Okay, so
down,
that's me, yes.
Thanks, Karl.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm Chris Fulton. I'm the head of business development and channel development for Bluesmart. We are the creator of the world's first smart suitcase, an accessory you push around with you while you travel. I've been in Silicon Valley for about 10 years now in various roles, mostly business development, working with other tech companies.
All right, perfect. So if you're like me and wondering why we have a wearable panel with a SIM card and a suitcase, you will be surprised that there is a connection here. We're going to start by talking with Karl, okay? And this is because Karl has a lot of experience and he's seen a lot of what is going on in the wearable space, especially in China. So Karl, can you go ahead and share with us what you have seen and kind of showcase for our audience what the problem is?
Well, first of all, in the Asian culture, wearing any kind of expensive looking device, even having a cell phone in your hand, is a status symbol. Wearing an Apple iWatch is the ultimate status symbol in China. And usually the person has the smartphone in the pocket and the watch on their hand. It's the ultimate status symbol. But the problem is when I travel into China, no matter if it's Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, the key manufacturing sectors for all kinds of electronics devices, the problem is most of these tier 1 OEMs have been given the edict by their management: you must make a wearable. It must be a smartwatch. Therein lies the problem, because they've already have pressure to make a device. But the problem is they're not putting aesthetics, fashion into the design aspects, because they're all engineers. And so therein lies the problem. I've approached and I've actually said to one large OEM, that's an ugly smartwatch. You will not sell that. And I had to, because it was truly ugly. So the key is when you wear a smartwatch, there are those types that want it for a utility purpose. There are those types that they're okay if it turns on, if it tells you the time, and even if you can receive or make a call. But it's the luxury and the luxury aspect of it, the fashion aspect that they're also striving for. And I had to explain that to hardware manufacturers, explaining to them, if you build it, they're just not going to come. You have to put fashion into it, and that's part of what I have been explaining to some of them as I go into China. And their viewpoint is, well, if all they care about is low cost. No, that's the wrong attitude. It isn't just about low cost. It has to be price competitive for sure, but it has to attract the user. And I've done research on all of this. Most of the top smartwatch manufacturers, some really get it, and some don't.
Yeah, comments from the other panels?
I actually think currently where we are with smartwatches that there is actually very little utility. So if you are looking at why people do wear smartwatches, there's a bit of novelty in it, but also it is a status symbol. And if we think about fashion, and I like this panel also to think about fashion beyond looking at what color something is, how we can swap out this band versus another. Really think about why we wear things. It's a way for us to reflect who we are and our identity. It's not just product design or industrial design. It's much more intimate and much deeper than that. I mean, there's a ton of fashion brands, and what they're really, really good at is having a very strong point of view and having a very strong perspective as to what kind of lifestyle, what kind of attitude that they are projecting. And we each, as individuals, even basically either decide who we want to become and who we want to represent ourselves, and more importantly, who our aspirational self is by the way we dress. And then ultimately it's a form of communication, that we use to each other. So if you think about fashion from that lens, how something looks and how you design a piece of jewelry, it is entirely, or a watch, or any type of wearable, it is incredibly emotional.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you've seen from out there, but I wear 2 smartwatches. And people ask me, why do you wear 2 smartwatches? And the answer is so that you will ask. And that is so that we can lead into a conversation specifically on this. Because when we're doing something, when we're accessorizing, we're trying to get attention in some way, shape, or form. Now, I specifically want to talk to people about the aesthetic of the design. I have the Moto 360, a very nice watch-looking smartwatch. And then I have the Apple Watch Sport, the first version. And most of the time, it's a black square screen on my wrist, like a computer screen. Great design, very aesthetic, smooth. It's got a lot of nice, the band's nice and all, but it does look like a computer screen. In my opinion, it's not good enough. Apple's... Yeah, well, it turns on when you tilt the wrist, but see, right, most of the time it is, if I'm holding still, it is off. Whereas this one can always be on. There's a number of things we can go back and forth on, but the reason why I like this one is because it looks like a watch. People have been wearing watches since sometime on the wrist, anyway, since sometime in the 1800s. Pocket watches before that. So we've been accessorizing in different ways with a timepiece And some of us will spend a lot of money for a Tag Heuer or other name brand watch. And it's a statement about who we are. Now, one of the things about wearables is that people will use wearable technology to make a statement about who they are. That's something that I pointed out almost 3 years ago in a list of wearable technology predictions. And it's happening, but it's happening slower than I think all of us would like to see, because we still have this problem. If you're seeing new stuff come in China, if I'm still disgruntled with the fact that this doesn't quite look like a watch coming from Apple, even the second version doesn't look much different, then we haven't got there yet. And I think that we need to get there. Now, next question, I'd like to pivot into that next question, which is how do we connect, how do we solve this conundrum? And as a UX UI designer, I'd appreciate your thoughts, Syuzi, on how we actually break through and solve this problem.
So I think the key is to actually really work with people in the fashion industry, because they really understand how to create a very strong point of view, how to tell a story through design, and also essentially basically how to make these things wearable. I mean, right now we're talking about accessories and we're talking about wearable devices. We're not really talking about garments. The moment you actually get to more textile-based garments, it becomes even more imperative to work in the fashion industry. And I've worked with both industries, and we can discuss whether there's a whole cultural shift that needs to happen in order for us to collaborate, whether we need people that can bridge that collaboration, whether we even have the same values inherently. One industry values utility, I mean, if I'm being very reductionistic, versus one industry that values aesthetics. But I think I think Intel is trying to do this by really trying to collaborate with people in the fashion industry from the ground root, right from the conception of an idea all the way to the execution of it, versus hiring an industrial design firm or a fashion stylist to come in and decide to skin your product once you've decided to create the feature sets. We also have to think about the user experience design of it. So when somebody puts something on their, this is actually my problem that I had with, I love the beautiful, I think it's the Mika watch that, or I guess wearable, that Intel designed. But what happened was they designed the form factor of it, the aesthetics and the materiality, but they forgot about the UI design. There was a massive disconnect between what the interface looked like and the hardware piece and the software piece. And as a user, to me, it's just something I put on. There is no online world and offline world. There is no hardware versus software. It's one piece and one experience. And all of that needs to be linked together. And it has to be thought about in a very cohesive way. And a lot of this is like, we can't work in silos. We have to have everyone talking with each other. We have to have our hardware engineers and our software designers and UX designers and the people who understand how to design these things for the body, all interacting from the very conception of a product.
And we don't want it to cause rashes. Right?
Correct.
And wearables are like one-night stands. You've got a rash, a bar fight if you went in with a Google Glass prematurely into a bar. We have to watch out what we're doing. It has to look good and feel good, and be careful with what our skin is doing with it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of hubris in the Valley where you have these team of engineers that are attempting to disrupt an industry, and oftentimes little things, and these aren't little things, otherwise we wouldn't be up here talking, little things like fashion are often left by the wayside. We're just backstage, we were looking at Josh's Motorola wristband, and he's had it since January and it's already falling apart. And I think if you were to compare that to another watch manufacturer, it certainly wouldn't meet grade for a Rolex or even sort of a middle of the road watch band. So I think the thing that's often forgotten is, instead of trying to make the best smart whatever or the best wearable, make the best watch and attack it from that perspective. And I think with that framework, the fashion and some of the other things will follow.
I don't know how many of you have heard of Wisewear. They have these beautiful bracelets, and they pass notifications, and they have sensors in them, and a woman wearing this bracelet can tap it and tap a secret code, and it will alert someone if she's in a bad situation. And these things belong in jewelry cases. Iris Apfel, the famous fashion icon, has endorsed these bracelets, and now they're available in Saks Fifth Avenue as of last month. You don't get into the jewelry case at Saks Fifth Avenue with this or with this. You get in there with beautiful designed pieces that happen to have technology infused in them, and in an eloquent design and way, so that no one knows that this is a wearable. Yet you know and get that value set out of it, the value set you got out of it. You're getting value from the aesthetic, how beautiful it is, and you're also getting value from the technology.
I think the thing we also have to resolve, though, is that's one wearable that is at Saks Fifth Avenue. There's this whole notion and idea of, well, where you sell wearables, where do they belong? Is it when you walk into is it a Target? Do you walk into Target and buy a wearable, or do you walk into a Best Buy, which is really where a lot of these wearables have initially been sold? So now there is the whole notion of how do you get your wearable into a Barney's? How do you get your wearable? I think the Mika, I'm not sure if I pronounced it right, it was initially intended to be sold. And how do you develop those relationships if you're actually a technology company? What happens if you partner with a fashion brand? Is it your brand, if you don't have a strong brand, gets lost. So there's a lot of interesting dynamics that have to happen with these types of partnerships. And you have your product in.
Yeah, I think I can offer some interesting insight here. So Bluesmart started as a company in December of 2014, but really the product itself wasn't launched or ready to be launched until the latter half of 2015. And really, back to the very first thing that Josh said about a team of engineers designing a black box, it was really mostly a team of engineering founders, people with an engineering background, that created this product. And while design and aesthetic weren't forgotten, we certainly didn't think about a suitcase as a fashion piece. It was very much designed with the crowdfunding, sort of early adopter, sort of buyer in mind. Very sort of masculine product, geared toward a male audience. And while it might be kind of tough to see in the audience, I invite you guys to come up after and look at the sort of the two products side by side. Here on the left, we have the original product that we designed with sort of that tech focusing feature. And we, once we got through our crowdfunding phase and decided that we needed to sell the product into retail, where most people are buying luggage, we found that there were limited avenues to sell a product like this. Best Buy obviously being sort of the one that comes to mind, but if you're not lucky enough to get into Best Buy, if you're not lucky enough to be one of the thousands of new products that are pitched there, let alone put it into actual circulation, you're left with a few e-commerce players, and then you just got to sort of piece it from there. So we really took a moment to think and understand, understanding our market, and we went out and we sought advisors. We actually signed the advisor for Tumi, the former CEO and founder of Tumi, onto our advisory board to help consult into the fashion world. And then we actually even made the move to move the bulk of our staff to New York so we could be closer to the fashion world, closer to the design world, and closer to most of the retailers that are selling luggage. And with all of those changes, we developed our next generation of product, which focused heavily on the color material finish. So, better zippers, better fabric, name brand materials, thinking with that sort of aesthetic sensibility that is required. And lo and behold, the retailers started calling. So we just launched 2 weeks ago in Saks Fifth Avenue as well. Bloomingdale's shortly by the end of the month, and we'll be in the Neiman Marcus Christmas book. And so those are the sort of things that in my opinion, that you need to do in order to attract those retailers. And those retailers are, for a lot of the country, still the tastemakers. It's a very small assortment that a lot of these big fashion retailers will hold. And so they are really sort of the tastemakers in driving consumer awareness in the products in a lot of cases.
That's an amazing story. And the interesting thing is if you know the history of Louis Vuitton, they started out with trunks, wooden trunks that were used to ship things in wagons that were, the merchandise was arriving and water would get in or whatever, and they designed a beautiful trunk. And here we have a beautiful, this is fashion. And we're making a statement about who we are with our suitcase. If you, on the outside and from afar, you can't really see the differences, but especially on the inside of those two suitcases, you see a difference, you feel a difference. And wearables are things that we see and feel.
I just wanted to add to that. So, when I walk into a Best Buy, you have to think about the mental models that the sort of your end user or customer has. I'm actually I may be more looking at features and, more technical attributes. The moment I walk into a Barney's, the first thing I do is I feel a sweater. I look at something, I pick it up, I feel it on, whether I put it on my body. There's a different mental model that the user has when they're walking into these types of retailers. So you have to take into consideration as to where do you envision your product is it on a shelf, at what store? What is your point of view? What is the story of your brand? And then try to really try to craft that experience for the end user at the point of purchase, and not just what it feels like when they take it home or unpackage it or unbox it. There's, again, think about the user experience holistically from start to finish.
Absolutely. We want to make sure that this is not just a logical decision when we're purchasing a wearable. This is something that you feel. We purchase on an impulse, and studies have been done on this, based on emotion. And we're, as has been termed in a book, predictably irrational. And when it comes to something that we feel and we love and we know that is going to express something or capture a moment, if you've ever prepared to go out on a date or impress your fiance or wife or who knows, it's that moment where your eyes connect. And then there's something that happens. You connect with the product in the same way. And we need to drive further towards that. What are some more ways that we can do that we can push towards having fashionable tech?
Is there anybody who's left-handed in the audience?
Yes.
Well, when you travel into China, nobody will claim to be left-handed. I can tell you left-handed people are unequivocally very creative. Okay, I am left-handed, and so is my daughter. I can just see the creativity watching my daughter grow up and the way she does things and the visualization. I'm going to tell you, left-handed people are very creative, and they should be on your team of fashion designers. That's number one. Number two, the technology that I'm involved in, this embedded SIM card technology. Do you realize that there are actually smartwatches there now that you can call and receive a phone call from, but they have a removable SIM in the back. You actually physically take it out, remove the SIM. This is going away with the embedded SIM card technology, number one. But number two, it not only removes at least $3 to $5 from the cost of the product, the cost of the removing it, the SIM, the removable SIM. The size shrinkage allows for more architecture space when you're designing other cool things into the watch. I think some of these OEM manufacturers have a huge limitation. They want to provide more power, they want to provide more, they want to provide 4G LTE connectivity, NFC and other things, but the space is so limited. They have so little architecture, and embedded SIM helps increase the space that they need for additional technologies in the watch. That's what I've observed, and actually I hit on this very early on in terms of the utility. We may not fully agree with that, but in a place like China, which is the largest transportation market on the planet, number one, the second largest, either the largest or second largest wristwatch population on the planet, they're using their smartwatches now to do payment, specifically subway transit ticketing. And there's one $30 watch called Show-Oct that has all 4 subway transit ticketing tokens in a $30 watch that you can buy. So whenever you're traveling in and around, the Chinese are very mobile. They're very mobile when traveling from city to city on a daily basis. So much more mobile than Americans are. And they need this kind of watch for a utility purpose. I would like you notice I don't wear a smartwatch, But I think if I do buy a smartwatch, it will have to have 4G LTE connectivity. And the reason is because I'm going to own that watch for a number of years. I'm not going to be one of those persons who buys it and sells it after 6 months. I'm going to own that watch for at least a few years. I want to make sure it has 4G, because 4G is going to be around at least another 10 years. Not only that, I like to do payments on my device. I enjoy doing mobile payments. It's so quicker and easier to do it on your wrist. You don't lose your cell phone when you have the capability to do a payment on your wrist. And for certain types of people, they want to do these things on their wrist because they're too busy and they can't have the phone in their hand. Running through an airport, you want to have a phone on your hand? Well, people do, but it's so much easier. So I have a little bit of different viewpoint because I'm watching activities in North America. I ask people questions about why they bought their smartwatch and how they feel about their smartwatch. I ask these questions because it benefits me, and then in the addition of the embedded SIM absolutely helps the fashion aspect because it allows them to design a better looking watch. And if they don't, I'm the gatekeeper. I'm the one who's going to tell them, this stinks. It's not going to fly. They may not like that. They may tell me to get out of their office. But in the long run, they're going to appreciate me very, very straightforward because this time is money and they're losing money if they don't have a watch that can sell. Bottom line, from their perspective.
Thanks, Karl. So we have 1 minute left, 10 seconds from each of you. What advice do you have for entrepreneurs that are going to be, or designers that are creating wearables? Go ahead. Yeah,
I'll try to be quick. 2 points. The first one is don't be afraid to increase your prices. Mark Andreessen famously said, if there's one piece of advice that you could give to Silicon Valley companies, it'd be raise your prices. So Barney's actually told us that they wouldn't carry our product because it wasn't expensive enough. So, just take that for what it's worth. And then I think the other thing is that I think it's been well established, but Silicon Valley has a issue with being too male dominant, and so taking into consideration that females are buying your products and making sure to design them for the 51% of the population of the earth.
Absolutely.
You wearable device manufacturers,
Bring your device to Switzerland or Paris. Ask people how they feel about your device. I mean, it's a really good it's a really good reason to go there. Show them, hey, this is my wearable, what do you think? I've seen some ugly things, and I'm telling people, I'm not going to buy that. So you can do trial or test marketing in the luxury capital of the world, Paris. It makes sense.
Yeah, no, Syuzi, last word?
My recommendation is really to do genuine collaboration, bring in all of your team players, your engineers, software, hardware designers, your creative directors, as well as your people who really understand design for the body, fashion designers, all at the conception of the idea and have them work together. I know it's really tricky, it's really hard, we all try to aim to do this, but I think the end results will be quite beautiful. And I want to end with a quote that it's by Yuval Behar, but he said, there's beauty in utility and utility in beauty. And I think if you start to look at it from a holistic standpoint that way, it could be a really nice guidepost to your designs.
What a great note to end on. Please join me in thanking the panel.